When Sony announced this, the RX1R Mark III, the photo press, including myself, maybe especially myself, had a bit of a meltdown. See, after more than a decade waiting for the update to this camera, we really expected something groundbreaking. We all wanted a camera that pushed the limits just like the RX1R Mark II did. Sure, now it's got a better sensor and better autofocus, but we were really hoping for some bold Sony engineering. But it seemed that's not what we got. Hey, I'm David Schloss, editor of Imaging Resource. If you want my unscripted rant about this camera, you can find that up here. After I did that video and talking to people in the comments, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe once I got it in hand, I would see what made it worth the 10-year wait. And I have to say, after having used it a lot this week, I am still disappointed. So traditionally with a review, you start with the good and then you go to the bad. So let's do that. Only in this case, the cons outweigh the pros by a lot. 10 years ago, Sony managed to cram the internals of a larger full-frame camera into a compact body. It was an engineering marvel of the time. And so we expected more of that magic when this camera came out. Instead, we got a sensor update, an autofocus update, and a massive price hike. Okay, you ready for the pros? It has the same 61 megapixel sensor found in the A7R V and the A7CR inside a body that is smaller than the A7CR. And you also get... No, that's it. So the RX1R2 had the same sensor and autofocus from the A7R2. This one borrows from the A7R5. So what's the issue? Well, that's all that Sony updated, and they removed some features. A former coworker and I used to talk about the table stakes in camera technology. The table stakes are what you need a camera to have just in order to be playing in a competitive field with the other cameras that are on the market. As new technology comes out, the bar keeps raising on how good cameras have to be. Do you know how high the bar is for even a good camera right now?
It's high. It's very high.
The RX1R2 met that high bar when it came out a decade ago, and it even exceeded it. But the bar has been raised significantly in the last decade, and this camera does not clear it. Okay, let's start with the sensor. I know I just said that the sensor was one of the pros, but there are some cons in this too. You see, a high-resolution sensor offers crop flexibility, but high-resolution sensors tend to get noisier even at moderate ISO levels. And like you would normally do, you can just use the IBIS in this camera to avoid having to crank up the ISO. Sorry, I just looked again and there is no IBIS in this camera. 10 years ago, that was fine. Today, it's a big omission, especially for RX1R Mark II fans who were hoping for that in an upgrade. And then there's the matter of the lens. This is the same Zeiss lens from 10 years ago. Not an updated lens, not based on, it is literally the same lens that the RX1R Mark II had. This lens was okay when Sony's autofocus was pretty slow to begin with, but now AF systems are really fast, and this lens is not. You can even hear the motors working. Here, watch this. If you take a slow performing lens and you put it on a fast autofocus system, you get a slow autofocus system, not a faster lens. Think of it this way, it's like putting winter tires on a Formula One car. The car's really fast, but the tires, they're not going to cut it. I found that this camera's autofocus system is noticeably slower to me than my A7R5, even when that's coupled to a lens that's sort of mediocre by today's standards. Now, some reviewers didn't find the autofocus to be slow, but again, I use the A7R5 almost every day. I know what the sensor and the processor should feel like, but it doesn't. I'll give you an example. We have two brand new adorable kittens who are sleeping on the rug right behind me. I have photographed them with every camera in my arsenal. I photographed them with my own A7R5. I just photographed them with the Nikon Z5 Mark II that's sitting over there. When I had the Nikon Z6 Mark III in for a review, I photographed them with that. And I know that the subject recognition system on Sony, Canon, and Nikon can and do pick up on the eyeballs of moving cats. With this camera though, I'm getting a lot of misses. And you might think at first like, well, that kind of makes sense because they move so fast. But these are kittens that are moving at the same speed as they did with other camera systems. Those nailed the eye detect. This is not. I have some other examples. This is a photograph of me that my son took. He was a few feet away from me. The eye detect for humans was on, and my eyes are clearly not in focus. This was shot at 1/200th of a second at ISO 200, so there was plenty of light and plenty of shutter speed here. This isn't motion blur, and you can see that my nose hair is clearly in focus and not my eyeballs. So thank you, Sony, for finally inventing nose hair AF. Here's a picture of my son's eye, and that nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So, but for a $5,000 camera, I really want the hit rate to be almost perfect. From an optical standpoint, Zeiss makes really good quality glass. This is a Zeiss lens. It's nice quality glass. Now, you can see some chromatic aberrations if you zoom into the images and pixel peep, but generally speaking, the quality of the lens is great combined with this sensor. beautiful images. The other massive problem is that the LCD screen doesn't tilt or flip. It's fixed. Now, if you're photographing like this or like this, not a really big deal. But what happens though if I want to photograph something like a flower or a squirrel or something down really low? Well, now I have to take the camera and the grass and I have to get the photo. And if I want to photograph something really low, I have to lay prone on the ground in order to get it. One thing that is a nice touch, the previous EVF was a pop-up EVF, which I didn't particularly like. It made the camera much smaller when you were putting it in a camera bag, but the pop-up system often got covered in like crud and you'd have to like scrape out stuff. It wasn't really wonderful for the longevity of your camera. The viewfinder is now built in. I like that a lot better, but I'm pretty sure that the viewfinder being built in is why the LCD screen doesn't tilt out. Would I rather have a pop-up viewfinder in order to get a tilt or a flip screen? Probably. I probably would. Also, the EVF is still pretty terrible in this camera. It's a very small field of view. It's not particularly detailed, which means you can frame things with it, but you really can't tell if you nailed the details. You can use the LCD screen, but it's also not a particularly great LCD screen, and it tends to get washed out in bright sunlight. You can crank up the brightness on the screen to be able to see it in the daytime, but then your battery life goes down, which is a big problem because the next point, the battery life is terrible. The battery life is rated for about 250 shots. Now, usually when you see that rating, it's pretty conservative, but I went out the other day and I shot 75 images and I was down to 61% charge. So yeah, that comes out to about 250 shots. I don't know about you, but I tend to shoot more than 250 shots in a day when I'm out traveling and sightseeing, which means now you got to carry a second battery with you. That's something I haven't had to do in a mirrorless camera in a long time. Also, the battery and the SD slot are in the grip here with an access port on the bottom. That's not normally a huge thing, but check this out. Let's say you have your camera on a tripod. So you've got your quick release mounted to your camera, and then the quick release is mounted to the tripod. Great. So now with the tripod quick release on, I cannot open the battery door to get out the battery or the SD card slot. So if you've got this on a tripod and you've run out of battery, you now have to take the quick release off of the tripod, unscrew the quick release plate, replace your battery or your SD card, put it back in, screw it back down again, put it on your tripod. Ugh. What I find so frustrating about this is that this is a problem that Sony solved on the ZV series, the ZV-1. So here I think is another indication that they didn't really redo this body. They just took the existing body and updated it a little bit for the EVF and for the LCD screen. Because if they had gone back and engineered this body, I don't think that there's any way that they would have still left it, so you can't get into the battery slot if you're on a tripod. Something someone in the comments complained about is the lack of buttons on the dial, and I do think that that's a problem, although these dials are particularly hard to turn, so it's unlikely that this is going to get moved in a camera bag like some other systems. It also has no joystick on the back. A lot of people don't care about that. All you need to do is use the screen as sort of a control pad for your autofocus points, but I'm left-eye dominant, which means that when I put my camera up here, my nose is on the LCD screen. There's one more thing that's a nice touch. So if you take this camera and you have it in landscape mode, the controls to adjust things are down here at the bottom. Take the camera and flip it, and now we can see that the controls are on the side. That is fantastic. I love that. Somebody pointed out in the comments to the previous video that adjusted for inflation, the RX1R II would have been about $5,000 today, and that's great, except the A7CR is $3,000 and the A7C II is about $2,500 right now. That camera has better features, better battery life, it has IBIS, it has interchangeable lenses, and it has video specs that aren't kind of outdated. This camera is a smaller body with a fixed, older lens, fewer features for $2,000 more. If you're a Sony shooter and you want something better, go get the A7CR. Or, if you're a Sony shooter, since this is a fixed lens camera and you can't interchange the lenses, go out and get a camera from somebody else. So here's the thing that's weird to me. Sony's legacy to me has always been miniaturization. They made their first success when they made a radio small enough to fit in a shirt pocket. The Walkman kept getting smaller and smaller every generation until it was barely bigger than the tape that would go in it. The last versions of the Discman were also barely bigger than a CD player. They made a mini disc player that was tiny. Their TVs get slimmer all the time while the functions get better. They made smaller cameras with more features than DSLR cameras, and they make smaller lenses that are bigger than a lot of the manufacturers' giant lenses. Sony is about putting better things into smaller packages all the time. But instead, the RX1R Mark III is the same size as the previous camera, but very little advancement, and a lot of things that I think should be in the camera are missing. Give me the RX1R Mark III at the A7CR's pricing, and then maybe we're talking. It's still not a great value, but at least we get a lot closer. So what do you think? Are we in the photo press overreacting to this? Is this a camera you would go out and buy? Or is this a camera that would be a hard pass for you? Let me know in the comments below. Thinking about this camera and now have changed your mind mind to buying it, please let me know that in the comments below. And if you got questions, ask them below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you want to see more of our honest, real-world reviews at Imaging Resource, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit us at imaging-resource.com. And don't get me started on the dash. For Imaging Resource, I'm editor David Schloss, and until next time, go out and give it your best shot.